Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Victor Fetter.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having me here, and thanks for Fidelity for hosting this session. We're going to have a fun night tonight. I do want it to be interactive, but after that bio, I sound like a geek. You know, gosh. So I'm curious, by show of hands, how many of you are studying computer science and want to be a geek? About 10% of the room. Excellent. You know, one of the things that I love about technology is that technology allows us to achieve results. It allows us to enable dreams. And one of the things that I caution about when we talk about technology is, what are you going to do with it? I'm curious. Those that raise your hands, what are you going to do with it? Come on, we're going to be interactive all night. Solve what kind of problems? Problems. Got it. Someone else. What are you going to do with it? Start a bit. What kind of business? Sorry? You know, I got to thinking, you don't need to start a business. All you could do is sell my iPhone. I saw it today because I have Flappy Bird. $90,000 on eBay. A phone loaded with Flappy Bird. Anybody interested? Oh, come on. So, you know, I think when we talk about technology, it has to start with purpose. And that is, what is it that we're doing? Why are we doing it? And for what benefit? If you don't have purpose in mind, how do you know the outcome? How do you know whether or not you've achieved the results? It's a lot more than the assignment that you get in the lab. It's a lot more than you get on a report card. It really is about the end game of results. Let's look at this for a second. Some of these items are in the news. Anybody play with Google Glasses? One here. You know, you sit there and you, okay, glass, and that's the command to activate Google Glasses. What do we do with Google Glasses? What do you think we'll do with them? Stalk? Is that what you said? Is that what you said? That's all right. I love honesty. What do you do with them? How about context-based information? How about real-time alerts? Sure, you could argue the form factor is maybe a little clunky, but the idea is that you can understand what's happening. But the glasses itself, the notion that you can get your driving directions in the little window up here versus on your phone, not too sure there's value there. What about Bitcoin? Everybody familiar with what Bitcoin is? You can't raise your hand for everything. Bitcoin. What is it? Somebody's going to describe it. Come on. Virtual currency. Well, let's get this straight. Virtual currency, unregulated, no governing body, and we're surprised there's fraud involved now. For what purpose? What's it going to do? What problem is it trying to solve? How about those wearable devices? You know, it could be the watch or whatever the case may be. But what are you going to do with that? Okay, you could tell you how many steps you took. Right? You could see your text message on your watch. But what do you do with it? And I'd say that is an example where it's just coming of age. The idea is when it can help inform you what decisions to take on a given day is when it adds value. Just reporting the news of what's going on, probably not going to add a lot of value. How about WhatsApp? Did Facebook really pay $19 billion for WhatsApp? Yes, they did, is the answer to that one. Put your head around $19 billion. Why? Why did they pay for that? They grow faster than Facebook. Sorry? User base. Sure, they had a great number of user counts. Why else? Yeah, exactly. The conversations were happening on WhatsApp, and how do you rank Facebook's messaging platform? You can say second. Yeah, exactly. Terrible, right? And so they needed to complement it. $19 billion. How is Facebook going to recover that, though? How are they going to yield their shareholders $19 billion plus return? This is the interactive part. That's a lot of ads. $19 billion worth of ads. That's a lot. What's a Super Bowl 30-second slot cost? $1 million a 30 seconds, something like that? That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot of return that has to be delivered to those shareholders. And my point is, when you think about this collection of tools up here, or techniques, or systems, or whatever you want to call them, is you've got to come back to what's the purpose. I would submit to you, technology for technology's sake is useless. Technology has to have an end game in mind. And my challenge is, as you're thinking about your studies, as you're thinking about the career you want to go into, is figure out where you want to make a difference. Figure out what your end game is. Tonight we're going to talk about a lot of different things. And I'm going to spend my time talking about LPL Financial. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing and how we think about technology. I'm happy to talk about my experiences at Dell and running global online commerce, a very significant revenue engine for Dell, about a third of Dell's entire revenue book. So we can have the conversation go wherever you would like it, and just feel free to raise your hand at any point for tonight's session. We start with our purpose is really about dreams. And our mission is independent financial advice that enables dreams. We want to help those of you who are struggling to pay for college, those of you who have aspirations of a wedding, those of you that are thinking about your first house, your first car, whatever the case may be, you have dreams. And for LPL, what we want to do is help millions of Americans through independent financial advice achieve their dreams. When we do that, and the way we do that is through a pretty robust platform. We are a cloud-based platform as a service that has a business operational arm as well. Let me put it in real context for you. So if you wanted to be a financial planner tomorrow, anybody want to be a financial planner? Oh, one, great. You want to be a financial planner tomorrow, you can go put out your shingle, you'll get your business cards done after you study all of your Series 6, Series 7s, and Series 24s and all that fun stuff, and you'd call us. And you would say, I want to be a planner, but I don't want to have to manage the infrastructure of providing advice. I don't want to have to manage the software that's going to calculate what the right mix of securities is. I don't want to have to figure out how to deposit checks and open accounts and all that fun stuff. I really don't even want to have to manage the bookkeeping of it, or deal with disbursements, or report to the government, or be checked regularly by the SEC. You'd call us, and we would come in, and we would help provide you that cloud-based software platform. We would let you plug in. We would set you up. It would give you the full end-to-end ability to provide advice, your specialty, while we do technology, service, and operations for your business. So that's what LPL does. Ultimately, though, it's a challenge because we have these, can I say barriers? Not barriers. These are things that we have to work with. We have increasing regulations, a volatile stock market going on. We have taxes, government reform, lots of activities taking place. And that makes it harder for Americans to achieve their dreams. They're looking for help. More than ever, Americans are looking for help. One of the conversations that we have in our industry is the rise of the robo-advisor. What's a robo-advisor? Anybody want to guess? I'm sorry? A computer. So if the notion of the robo-advisor is you can get all the financial advice you need by just putting commands into the computer. Show of hands, how many think that's going to be the way it is? One? And would you go to a computer doctor to do surgery? To get the diagnosis? Sure. And we think that we would agree with you, by the way, that there's a way for technology to help inform where you are. But given the complexities, we increasingly see people looking for advice. So when we look at our portfolio, in the introduction you heard, we're the largest independent broker-dealer. We serve about 14,000 independent financial planners. Let's specify that word independent for a second. Independent means they can sell any product. It means they can promote any planning model that they would like, and typically they earn more money by way of commissions, etc., versus going to a traditional wirehouse as a platform. When we look at the platform of the institutions, these are banks and credit unions. Banks and credit unions who say, I want to capture and offer a financial planning service to my customers, but I really don't have the infrastructure to build that out. And so we would help them put our platform into their institution. We offer all the services that you see on the bottom here: retirement, insurance services, succession planning, practice acquisition, investment solutions, etc. But let's talk about this technology thing for a second. We see a bunch of forces happening all around us. The first is we see the rise of compute power, Moore's law. But the notion that things are changing rapidly. Believe it or not, I was in these bottom two boxes and working on those computers. Today, my phone has more power than those computers. But the notion is the accelerated pace of compute power is allowing more possible. That manifests itself in the experience. So we talked about wearable devices. If you go way back to the phone, yes, we did carry those big bag phones around. Anybody know those bag phones? You remember your parents carrying those? We had to bolt them in the car. I mean, that was way back when. But look, it's changed. We're now talking through all kinds of mobile devices. So we now have compute power supplemented with mobility, and then we think there's an experience going on. Anybody specializing in user experience? I'd say that's probably one of the most important areas we see right now. It's how do we interact with technology? How do we take all this information and make it make sense to the end user? It's one of the biggest challenges we have, because more than ever, we've got more data than we know what to do with. How you present that becomes the challenge. And then we have big data, analytics. Any data scientist in the room? You're going to make a lot of money, man. That's good. Absolutely. Data scientist is it right now. How do you have skills or professionals that really understand the magnitude of data that's coming in and being able to make sense out of it? Let me put it in perspective this way for you. Who's our math whiz? All right, you going to do some quick math for me? I don't know the answer, so you're going to have to work with me fast here. 15,000 advisors. On average, call it 500 clients. On average, they have, a given client probably has about 30 to 50 securities. You can pick the number that you want. And prices change daily. Let's just stick with that for right now. How many data points is that? Just you could say a lot. That's all right. A lot, right? And that's just the view of market securities and market data. Now you talk about what does that mean for a transaction that's come in? What does it mean for their goal planning? What does it mean for disbursements? What does it mean around forecasting of what's going to happen? The data is immense. And then we have the rise of social. The rise of this digital experience that we're still trying to figure it out, to be honest. I mean, how do you make money on Facebook? How does a corporation use Facebook? Instagram. What's Instagram's financial model? Who can describe that to me? Snapchat. What's Snapchat's financial model? Twitter? Sorry, somebody said something? Ads? Twitter? Real-time content news stream? I can get a little bit closer to that one. I get more excited about that one than some of the others. But the point is, we haven't figured out all the underlying economics, the underlying experience, the underlying business model of all of these social experiences. So we can get excited about technology, but the question is, do we really understand its purpose? And it's all around us. We have this notion of ubiquitous computing. Would you believe this is a tour in Israel where you can get on a mule and have Wi-Fi access? It's expected. Do you start shaking when you're outside of Wi-Fi range? It's expected. It's around us. That means the interaction model and the expectations of how we provide solutions to the end constituents is changing and increasing. This notion of data visualization. You guys are probably smarter than this than I am. But how do you take this mass quantity of data and being able to see the peaks and the valleys and the areas that you really want to drill down on? Your consumers, our investors, our financial planners, they don't want to have to comb through this field of valleys and hills and mountains of data. We've got to make it make sense for them. How about everything as a service? What do you mean when I say everything is a service? What does this picture show? Sorry? Pretty buildings with nice lights. This is the move from selling light bulbs to selling light. That's a service. You know, as light bulbs have matured, do they die as frequently as they used to? No. So if you're GE, what do you have to do? You got to realize there's not many light bulbs going out to your factories anymore. So you have to shift your business model, and then you say, well, light bulbs provide light, so why don't I sell light as a service? And literally, buildings can outsource their lighting infrastructure to a third party, and they can change the colors, do demand management, etc. The point is understanding that business model and the application of technology is the intersection that matters. While we're talking about intersections, let's talk about Uber. Anyone use Uber? You know, this one, it amazes me. In the corporate executive world, it's the most used app. And because it makes that connection for a needed service. For someone that needs a ride from point A to point B, and to be able to click it on my phone and know that a black town car is going to show up that will help me get there in a matter of seconds. I no longer have to book in advance and know the right time. I don't have to get in a yellow cab. I now get this. And it's about the connections that technology is enabling. You put it together, you've got an ecosystem of change that is happening, and it's happening real fast. And if I just pause again, and I want to cause you to reflect, you can get excited about Ruby Rails. You can get excited about Hadoop. You can get excited about becoming program management certified. But at the end of the day, if you really don't think about how you're going to use it, in what business context, and what difference you're going to make, I would submit that you've missed the mark. And I think that's our challenge as technologists. That's our challenge in this changing business world. With that as a backdrop, I'd like to give you 5 elements that we think are foundational, that we think are instrumental for helping use technology for a competitive advantage. And we'll walk through them, and I'd like to have some engagement on each of them. The first is culture. How do you think culture in technology has changed over the years? So now you're hired. You come work for me or any one of my competitors. You go work for Dell, whatever the case may be. Congratulations, you're on the technology team. You're part of that esteemed group called IT. How do you think that culture's changed? Interactive, come on. Put yourself in. Anybody do an internships? No. Well, I'll give you a little bit of a lens on the culture. The culture is that appetite, that hunger to understand, that spirit of working together. If I was to rewind back 15, 20 years, you have very stove-type technology environments. I did X. I worked on system Y, and I just coded the report that I had to spit out every morning at 9 a.m. Whereas now you have a culture of interaction, a culture that's seeking to get feedback as a part of an ongoing cycle, a culture that's saying it's a lot bigger than just the technology. I tell my team all the time, I said, delivering projects on time, on budget, is failure. I said, how do you achieve a higher order of magnitude? You have to do it on time. You have to do it on budget. You have to do it on scope, but you have to deliver the business outcome. And do you know we don't measure the business outcome nearly as much as we should? That's about changing the culture. The second foundational element I would submit is agility. Again, if you compare and contrast where technology was a number of years ago to today, a number of years ago, when we talk about an enterprise resource planning system, that would be how many years to deliver? 2+, if you're lucky. Large programs. And by the way, by the time you got to the end, you discovered the requirements have changed because the business moved on and you needed to go back to the beginning. Whereas now we're talking about agility in terms of how do you partner and put out solutions real time? How do you spend and create 2, 3, 4-week cycles? When I got to Dell, we made changes to the Dell online environment twice a year. Just think about that for a second. We made changes to the online environment twice a year. When I left, we were making the changes 4 times a week. Agility is that notion of being able to introduce concepts, solutions, trial and error into your solutions regularly. That's the second. The third is architecture. And that is, how do you build, plan for capabilities? I think the opportunity for us as we look and we think about our solutions is when we talk about middleware, APIs, master data, those are foundational elements that have to be core to most enterprises. Because if you have that architecture, can you imagine going to build a multi-story building without scaffolding? Or how about a building on sand? How about a building that didn't have single conduits for electricity or shared a common elevator shaft? When we talk about architecture, it's the pillars of capabilities that we need that everyone can leverage. If each of you are working for me and you came to our environment, we would tell you, here's our master data standards, here's our middleware standards, here's our user experience and design standards. Go create a solution, but make sure you leverage the interdependent components so that we can provide a seamless end-to-end experience. That architecture is key, and it's often an undeveloped skill. It's one that we need. I go back to my experience at Dell. At one time, I had the opportunity to lead the architecture team. 7,000 IT employees at Dell working on IT systems, 600 people in the architecture group. I think architecture is key for making sure you understand the foundation that you're going to build upon. Innovation. It's I think, one of the greatest challenges of our profession. And I don't mean innovation, for example, like Google Glass and all of those other capabilities, or the Galaxy, or the watch. What I'm talking about is innovation for mainstream purposes that have an outcome. If you're LPL, if you're Dell, if you're GE, if you're Lowe's, if you're NC State, how do you drive innovation using technology to further advance the outcome and the purpose of those organizations? I think it's one that we have to put into practice. So we do innovation days. We tell everybody to stop working for a day. And we say, just go work on something that sounds really cool. If you want to bring some people together and you have an idea that you think will accelerate our business, great. If you have a struggle or a challenge you don't know how to solve and you want to collect people from around the organization to solve it, great. We do that, we win. We had a number of innovation days. The last 2 that we've surfaced 50 ideas that we never thought of. Of the 50 ideas, we've already filed patents on more than a half dozen of them, and 4 of them are already in production. That's real time. Otherwise, it never makes it into the stable of solutions. The last is talent. And from a talent perspective, it's an opportunity to make sure that we're bringing the right people into the mix. When we look for talent, we're looking for people that are creative, people that are thoughtful, people that certainly bring a skill and an expertise to the table. But the biggest thing we're looking for is can you lead through and with others? Can you work together? That's the environment that we're in. It's an environment where we use technology to really come together to fulfill that purpose, to drive to a higher order deliverable and set of solutions. And I can talk about LPL and I can talk about Dell as much as you'd like, but I think other businesses are making the turn as well. Look at Tesco. Tesco is a global supermarket chain, predominantly in Europe, a large footprint. I had the opportunity to live there many times, shopper of Tesco. But look at what they've done and some of the things that they've been thinking about. How about facial recognition to be able to offer real-time experiences or coupons or solutions or product offerings in their store? I think that's pretty innovative. Use my face and understand exactly what I'm trying to do to promote a new product to me. Grocery stores going to branded tablets and streaming music. They found a market. They carved it out. Go to GE, selling big machines, big equipment. Taking now through all of the sensors that exist on those machines and offering a holistic service offering, improved maintenance contracts, better planning around downtime, advanced notification of part errors. How do you take all those insights and put that machine in a different light, now coupled with a robust service experience? Or get to Disney, and I love this one. I'm going to Florida. I can't wait to go and try it. But the Magic Pass. Have you seen the Magic Pass? It's now the band you wear, and it gets you entry into the park. It allows you to keep your current account. It's your hotel room key, all in one place. I think that's where innovation starts driving results for many mainstream organizations. When you think about how we provide technology to our advisors, and our advisors, those independent financial planners, those entrepreneurs who are looking to build a robust business, you say, well, Victor, how do you do that? How do you take everything that you've learned and begun that road and that journey to providing them? And I thought I'd give you a glimpse into some of the solutions. And I think I worry that your first reaction may be, really? That's the best you could do? But I challenge you to think about how else you would use technology in this space. Because remember, at the end of the day, I'm not running a not-for-profit. I'm running a for-profit enterprise trying to help those advisors. So when we do it, we think about it, we use smarter, simpler, more personal. That's our corporate tagline. Our message is clear. How can we provide our advisors with the information they need to provide smarter advice to you and your families? Simpler. How can we make their environment simpler? If you walked into an advisor office, a typical one, not all of them, you would find stacks of paper. You would find legacy computers. Kid you not. Went to an advisor's office and he says, I like to work standing up. I said, well, show me. He had a hospital tray. You know the hospital beds that move up and down? With his laptop sitting on top of phone books working on that. Innovation doesn't have to be grand. It has to meet the need. So we want to help them be smarter. We want to help them be simpler. And we also want to be personal. It is our belief that personal advice, is that experience and that conversation we have to get to know you is what really makes a difference. So let's walk through them. We have an offering called the Streamlined Office. The notion that's saying, hey, can we put documents in the cloud? Can we do remote deposit capture through your phone? And can we create and use e-signatures in a coupled fashion is there. And again, I sit here and I often struggle with this. And we look, and this is relatively easy to do. Would you agree this is easy to implement? It is fairly easy to implement. But it's the aggregation, the connection of these in a unified experience for an industry that hasn't been transformed that is the real sweet spot. When I think of technology purpose, that's what we're doing. I don't have to go tomorrow and sell Bitcoin to my advisors. I don't have to go explain to them how we're going to manage that on our platform. They want us to help them be more efficient. We look at enhanced trading and rebalancing. If you have a portfolio with our advisors, you will find that your portfolio will get out of balance with the markets. For an industry, a very traditional way is I load up all the securities in an Excel table. I capture the market price of those securities. I then allocate a percentage that I want in terms of their classification, and then it tells me how many I got to buy and sell of each security. The greatest tool of all, Excel. However, that advisor has 300, 400, 500 clients, 500 investors that they need to do that for. Do you think they have the time to do that? And do you think that's the most efficient way? No. No. So as an industry, we put tools out there that allows it to do it automatically. What used to take weeks now takes seconds. I push a button and say, this is the allocation I want. And by the way, I don't want to do it just for Susie. I want to do it for these 40 people in this type of portfolio of mine. Simple things where technology can make a difference. And then mobile. There's little doubt that we're a mobile society, that we're taking and using technology on the go. Some of you right now, you're on your devices, you're tweeting, whatever the case may be, it's here. The question is, how do we use technology? How do we provide information? When we think about the collaboration and the opportunities that exist, we think it's fairly significant. So let's stretch a little bit and talk about ways and where we're going. You take on big data in the cloud. The notion that we can be proactive and share market advice to share what is a best practice around technology and experience is what our advisors are asking for. The notion that we can collaborate video electronically in a complete window. You do it all the time, right? You're Ubering, you're Skyping, you're FaceTiming, whatever the case may be. Bring that in the corporate setting. Oh, but by the way, the corporate setting says I got to record every video conversation. I got to track every text message. I got to capture every email. That's the regulations we have to live under. So how do you do that effectively? How do you really drive a degree of change becomes our challenge. We see it come together. If you take the experience of a Google Glass or your smartwatch or whatever the case may be, if you're an advisor, wouldn't you like to be notified right now that the market plunged? The market went down 4, 5, 6, 700 points. And by the way, your biggest client's risk is in their portfolio around these securities. Press here to call Bob and tell him he's having a bad day. I think that's what it gets to. I think that's the technology where we can be able to help and be more productive. The notion of that robo-advisor or IBM's Watson, we think that's a way to give insight and share experiences and ideas that we can then take and enable a more productive conversation with our investors. For us, though, it's not just about technology. I'm going to say that over and over again. It's about the aggregation of a bunch of services. It is about consulting. It is about training. It is about technology, but it's also about support. You have to have a whole package. You have to have a whole package couched in a manner that is meaningful to your business. And I think as we think about technologies, we think about the roles that you'll play coming into our organizations, I would encourage you to think about that purpose, think big, and really drive for a big change. And think about, what are your dreams? As a provider of services to you and your families, we want to help enable those dreams. How can we do that? How do you get the best advice there is out there? For us, we think technology provides the platform to do that. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have. You're going to be shy now? Go ahead, please.
I like the concept of the innovation days. I try to think about how we could implement something like that. And I think the very first response most people would have is, I'm too busy. I'm too busy to take a day to be innovative. Yeah. I mean, from a cultural perspective, the first time you rolled that out, what kinds of responses did you have, and have you overcome any?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I started the innovation days back when I was with Dell 2, 3, 4 years ago. And it's really important to free up that time and to provide some room to innovate. So some of the things that we've done is told people that, look, you don't get you're not off the hook for your deliverables. You still have to figure that out. But the notion that you can come together with small teams and focus on an opportunity or problem is key. The leader's involvement was critical. The other part was no constraints. I told the team, I said, here's our rules for Innovation Day. Remember our code of conduct and don't do anything illegal. As long as you've abided by those two, go create. And you'd be amazed at the freedom that it gives our team members, our employees, to really just think and explore and try something different. We did speed dating around ideas. And so we had people come up and said, I have an idea of A, B, and C, 1-minute pitches. Somebody else came up, I have an idea of 1, 2, and 3, whatever it may be. And then we broke out and said, go find your teams. No structure, just given permission to think, to brainstorm. Out of that, the next day, we came through and said, okay, who's ready to present their ideas to the leadership team? What a great way to memorialize the work that's been done and get that insight and that feedback from the leadership team. The next day, so now we're 3 days into it, we turned around and spent $500,000 funding projects. Fast forward about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we start filing patent applications, and we give a couple $1,000 rewards for the people that are on the application. All that has to be in place with the freedom to move, I think, to really be successful on the innovation days. I think if you don't have all of that, you're not going to get the best results. Other questions? Yes, sir.
It says you progress and have more success stories to share. It's easier to grow and grow. Early on, with advisors, I think there's a lot of turnover early on in their careers, and consequently, while there are a chunk of 30 and 40-year-old advisors, there are a lot of 50, 60, and 70-year-old advisors. When you're talking about applying technology, how much pushback did you get, or I guess even before you were with LPL, how much pushback was there as far as resistance to doing it in a new way when I'm so used to doing it the way that's been working for me for 30 years? Sure.
Yeah, so we see generational views, right, around the acceptance of technology. And what we'll see is, for example, people first coming into the business, and they get all excited about technology. They want to fully deck their office out with flat screen monitors and iPads connected to them by Apple TV, and really want to have that dynamic experience, and sometimes quickly realize they're out of money. And the money coming in is not as fast as the money coming out. And that's what entrepreneurs do. They learn the models for their respective businesses. And on the other side, we do see challenges with acceptances. This is the way I've always done it, and frankly, my practice is strong, and I really don't want to spend the time or energy to change. Here's what I think the astute advisors are experiencing, though. When you look at the aging U.S. population, you're finding a significant amount of wealth that is being passed on generationally. And so now they're seeing investors come to their office with their families. And often their children, are saying, this is really the person who's managing all of our family's assets? They don't even have an iPad. Do you see that stack of papers over there in the file cabinets? They don't even have an imaging machine. That is creating, I think, a new form of a shift, right? Where you have more seasoned professionals realizing they have to adopt to really make a difference. I think the middle group is probably gets it the most. And they're recognizing that we can actually use technology to help them grow their business. When that middle market advisor says, hey, I want to plug in Salesforce, and they're going to offer me a robust cloud-based CRM that's going to help me with lead generation, capture the moments that matter, and take that to account opening, They say they get that. They get that. When we can provide the whole book of business through a mobile device, they get that. When we no longer have to have their admin run out and deposit checks down the bank, once a day, they get that. And so I think you do see these models that inform the experience. I think it's our job to share and educate. And that's what I do more than anything else, is share what we learn about how technology can help them out. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I like how you talked about innovation, that it's not just being technology, is having technology be an end in and of itself.
Correct.
I like how you talked about having being able to innovate to drive the results for markets that you're trying to reach. Kind of at our place in time, I think a lot of us probably don't have a lot of ideas of what that looks like, or even how to figure out what needs to be innovated. What advice would you have on trying to figure out ways and areas to be creative?
Yeah, I would offer two pieces of advice. The first is, I would ask you to think about those things that you love today around technology and work to understand the business construct around it. It was my earlier examples. How is Facebook going to make money? How is Flappy Bird going to make money? Again, these are ideas and they're fun in the moment. But at the end of the day, you have to make them meaningful. And I think when you do that, you put yourself in a mindset to think about how technology matters and how do you bridge that gap between a really cool idea and something that ultimately will matter. And you can keep going on the valuations of companies, and you can just keep going down that road a long time. I think the second is, what problems would you like to have solved? What capabilities would you like to have enabled? I think when you think about those aspects, you can then come in and say, okay, let's look at a different model. Let's look at how technology can be applied in that context. And so what problem are you trying to solve? What physical or process problem, whatever the case may be. And then we go ahead and solve problems that way. I'll give you an example. In our environment, we have 3,500 employees. And those employees want to work on any device there is, right? The CIO, who's responsible for capturing every transaction that happens on those devices, protecting the assets, keeping them patched so that we don't have any security holes, all of those kind of things, is what do? Your natural thing is, well, bring a BYOD strategy into the house. Okay, but bring your own device. And I can think about bringing your own device into our shop, but then are you going to walk out with that information, and how do I capture that? And by the way, are you going to let me partition something on your machine that I can wipe anytime I want? Those are all the questions that you have to come with, and this is one that we deal with regularly. And we go, well, wait a second, let's just go back to, believe it or not, the ages of the dumb terminal. Let's do a VDI experience, a virtualized desktop. I don't know if you use them here or not, but put a virtualized desktop into the environment. And that's a shift. I mean, that's almost a 360 from where we were, but it is a solution that helps solve that problem. It has its own complexities, but it's one that we look at. Now that it's been enabled by the cloud, et cetera, it gives us a lot of expansion opportunity as well. And so I'd say, what problem we're trying to solve, and then try to apply innovation to that. Other questions? I guess I'd ask a question for you. How do you do this in a global context? So LPL is a US company, and our customers are all in the US. But if you go back to Dell, and I put my hat on there for a second, 130 plus countries was that online experience. How do you take everything I just described and you say over $15 billion of revenue through an online channel in 130 countries? How do you take what I say and put it in that context? That's significant. And I think that the foundational principles that we described, talent, architecture, culture, agility, those are the elements that you have to have in order to scale. And I was describing earlier, one of the biggest challenges I see we face is, how do you innovate at scale? How do you create really neat ideas that can support a book of business that big? That's what we get excited about. Our teams don't get excited about the latest, release of Java or Ruby Rails or any of the other technologies that are out there. It's important, and yes, they're used to solve the problem, but we do get excited about those bigger issues. This is operating at scale, innovating at pace, and we get really excited when we see our customers very happy. Other thoughts or questions? Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.